Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson. Joining me is Dante. What's up, Dante?
Hey, Leslie, doing well. For those who don't know me, I'm Dante. I'm a late 40s Italian gentleman with silvering hair, a blue shirt, and behind me you can see the blue background of my room and a few Christmas lights I've got over on the window.
Sweet. So I gotta ask, why? That is an awesome visual description. What's the deal behind that?
Sure. So it's something that a lot of Microsoft folks are starting to do. It's starting to catch on. It's basically a way to help make the presentations be a little bit more inclusive. We're a lot more of our customers are blind or visually impaired, and I've actually heard from folks that just those little visual descriptions help them get a little bit of a mental model of who's talking and get a little bit of an idea of what's going on around them. So helps them feel more inclusive or more included. And if it helps people feel inclusive, I'm all for it. Why don't you give it a shot?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. So I'll give it a whirl. So hi everyone, I'm Leslie Richardson. I am a Black woman with short black hair, and behind me is my slightly messy apartment with a Snoopy poster in the background.
Perfect. Doesn't take much, but if it helps people feel like they're more part of what's going on, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. So, Dante, what are we talking about today? I know you're like the editor guy, so what's up?
Yeah, I work both accessibility and editor, and today I get to wear my editor hat a little bit. So I want to show off a couple of the features that we're releasing here in 17.1. You might have seen some of these already in the preview channel, but I just want to bring some of the kind of bigger ones out right now. So maybe folks who haven't noticed them can see what they are.
Awesome.
Now, so the first one, we get a lot of people telling us that they're working with Visual Studio along with other tools. And if there's one thing that'll mess up your flow, it's when you're making changes in one product and then you switch to another product and you forgot to save them in the first place and so on. So we've implemented our first round of what we're calling autosave, and not a particularly imaginative answer. But what this is, I'm hitting Control Q to go into Visual Studio Search. I need to put focus in the right application, of course, and searching for autosave. When I do this, this is going to take me to the Environment Documents page in Tools option, and there's a checkbox here for Save Documents. Oh, sorry, automatically save files when Visual Studio is in the background. So when I check that, I'm going to press OK, and you can see that the file I'm working in right now is dirty. As soon as I move focus to any other application, so like here I right-click the toolbar, the little asterisk up in the File tab indicates that this file has now been saved to disk. So as soon as Visual Studio loses focus in any way, it's going to go ahead and commit all of your dirty files to disk on the spot. So by the time I get over to the other tool that I want to work with, I've already saved my files, the other tool's already up to date, and I'm able to have a much cleaner interaction between the applications.
That is really sweet. And I also just fixed my camera problem. So if it looked like I was frozen the whole time, I was totally still paying attention. So yeah, that is really great. And I think the editor, it's just got so many hidden gems like this. A lot of places in Visual Studio do, I think, that just a lot of people don't know about. So it's great that we're doing a deep dive here.
Yeah, it does. And unfortunately, it's a two-edged sword because we add these new features, but if people can't find them, it's not providing any value at all. And then we go back after the fact and say, people aren't really interested in this feature. Well, is that because there's a problem with it? Is it because they don't know about it or what? So yeah, things like this, we're trying to do more of these to help raise the awareness of these features so we can also get the feedback. Autosave is a great one. Right now, we're saving when Visual Studio loses focus. What about when you change documents? What about if I'm just sitting here working away and I'm idle for a second, Visual Studio, save my file for me. I don't want to have to do it explicitly. Now, autosave is one of those features. We had a long conversation about whether we wanted to turn it on by default, and we decided not to. And I have a feeling some of our audience is going to agree with that because we have people who want specific control over when the file is saved. We also have people who are saving their files on, say, a remote share or something like that. At that much I/O, it's going to start becoming disruptive. But for me, I'm running on my local machine. Having autosave on just reduces the number of times that I have that weird hiccup that I didn't want that. I've got that control, and it makes things a little bit smoother for me. So it's one that we really want people to give it a try. Let us know, how can we make it better? How can we change it? One of the things right now that we're really curious about is it will save every dirty document that you've got. That includes miscellaneous files that you might have opened outside the solution cone. That includes log files, everything. Maybe that's not exactly what you want. If it's not, help us understand where we can go with this and how we can make it more useful to you. So that kind of feedback, it's great to go to the developer community and give us that feedback, and we'll just keep the communication lines open.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask, like, can you specify which documents you want to stay out of, like, the autosave? Something like that.
That's something that we had put in the spec. And for right now, we said, let's find out if the community actually wants that. So that would have actually been a substantial amount of work to have. Okay, let me specify which files do you want to save by extension? Do you want to save by directory? How are we going to specify that one? We decided for now, we'll just do everything, and let's wait for the community to come talk to us to figure out what do they actually want. And if folks really say, oh my God, please stop saving anything in these particular directories, we can expand on it.
That makes sense. Yeah. I know personally, I would probably turn autosave on. I'm very paranoid about losing my work. So it's just like, let's leave it on, whatever. But I totally understand the appeal of keeping it off as well. So
I had a developer I used to work with who had there's an option I didn't even know about to turn off save on build. So normally when you kick off a build, it automatically saves all your documents. I didn't realize that you can actually disable that, because he wanted such fine-grained control about every file and when it was saved to disk. He turned that off, and he got into the habit to make sure he saved things before he built.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I couldn't do it,
but
he could, and that was his ideal workflow. And I don't want to disable that one if that's what helped him be good.
Kudos. Yeah. I'm just thinking of like coding at 1 a.m., having to like go through the trouble of making sure I save 5 docs before I hit build on something that may or may not even work, and then rinse repeat. So
to be honest, I'm so spoiled from the Office products that have autosave on. When I'm working on my Word document or a PowerPoint presentation, I just turn autosave on and I never have to worry. And even if I do something terrible, I've got autosave. I use revision control. I always have that backup that I can, oh my God, I just deleted everything. No, you got ways to get it back. It works, and I find it very helpful. But again, we want to see how people are working with it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. In relation kind of to save, we got a question from chat actually asking about format on save, which I thought was part of the productivity power tools extension for a while there, but I'm not sure what its status is.
So that's great, and that actually dovetails quite nicely to the next thing I wanted to show off. One of the features that's actually been around for a while, it was actually the first feature I worked on when I came over to the editor team, is the code cleanup feature. So down here at the bottom right, there is a chevron that has a broom next to it and a configure code cleanup. You can also get to this from Control-Q search to configure code cleanup. And what I've got here is a dialog that has a set of fixers. A fixer, by our definition, is a combination of an analyzer and a transform. Each analyzer analyzes your code looking for something, and the transform is applied when it finds it. So the first fixer on my list, remove unnecessary usings, this one will go through my file and look for any using statements they're not actually being referenced. Probably don't need to explain this in great detail, but if it detects code that is unnecessary, it applies a transform, which is to remove it. So I'm going to hit OK here, and then I'm going to just hit Run Code Cleanup, which is Control-K, Control-E. And if you watch at the top of my code document, the using system.io, which I wasn't using, is now removed. And it even sorted my usings because that was one of the other fixers that I've got applied. Now, code cleanup's been there for quite a while, and I'm going to undo to put that back in. But I'm going to go into Visual Studio Search again. Actually, no, I'm going to go directly to Tools Options this time, because I think there's a bug in this build that doesn't show up in Control-Q Search. But I'm going to I'm in Tools Options, and I'm going to search the options for Code Cleanup. And it's going to take me to Text Editor Code Cleanup. And there's now a checkbox here for Run Code Cleanup Profile on Save. Now, I already have this checked because this is actually something that I like. So now if I make a change to my code, well, you know what? I need to add documentation for these anyway. Price for 1 unit, and I hit Control S. You'll notice my document is saved, but those code cleanup fixers were also run at the same time. So as soon as I did that, the using statement that I didn't have was removed. It sorted my usings. Every time I hit S, it is maintaining the code properties that I've got set up in my document.
That is great. So it looks like you can pretty much customize your ideal code cleanup world anyway, right? So like in addition to let's sort the usings, you could you sort other things like properties that you write or anything like that?
Well, what you can configure right now are all of the fixers that are available in Configure Code Cleanup. So there is one in here for ordering modifiers. There are ones in here for accessibility modifiers, which are things like private and things like that, unnecessary casts and so on. And this is a list that we're working with the language teams to expand on. On the editor team, we don't create these fixers. We leave it to the language specialists. Like the Roslyn team, they know C# better than anybody has any right to know it. They're the ones who are providing the fixers to the code cleanup that we can expose here. So whatever they tell us to add in, we can go ahead and get it here, and then you can hook that up to Configure Code Cleanup. One of the things that we've been asked a couple times is how we can make the code cleanup profiles be part of editor config. So you could actually create your profile of what fixers you want, add that to editor config, and then that would be something that would live with the repo and make sure that everything is maintained. We're looking into that right now, and hopefully I'll have something to announce about that in a future show. But again, those are the kinds of things that we're looking to our community to tell us, how can we make this better? That's one that we're definitely listening to see if we can make.
Exciting, yeah, because that would make like a great extension, if not something that gets integrated into VS proper, like the ability to do that, or at the very least define additional configurations that maybe aren't in that default list.
Exactly. And one of the things that, if you notice, when I go into Configure Code Cleanup, we've got 2 profiles. One of the reasons why we have multiple profiles is maybe you want profile 2 to be your quick cleanup that does some very simple things. So that every time you save, it's just doing the things like making sure your white space is set correctly or things like that. While your profile 1 is the one you want to run before you submit to, commit it back to your repo. So you've got 2 different scales of, here's my fast one that I'm running with versus my more thorough one that I want to run before I'm ready for a PR or something to that effect. There's different ways that people are using this, and this is a great opportunity. Again, in developer community, we'd love to hear how people are using it and help us identify where those gaps are so we can make things a little bit better.
Yep. We hear your feedback.
We do.
We try to address it at the very least.
We do. On the editor team, I average 15 to 20 feedback items per week. So I have to keep up on it on a weekly basis. Otherwise, it just gets out of control. But I'm glad to get that feedback. I go through every one of those one by one because I want to know where our community is asking for things. And many of the changes that we're prioritizing, the things that we're working on most, are the ones that we're getting asked for most frequently. So it's definitely an avenue that we use to make sure that we're doing the right things for the community.
Cool. Oh, before we proceed, going back to auto format on save and autosave in general, forgot to ask, what version are those save features available on?
So the auto format the code cleanup on save is available in 17.1. I know I can't remember which preview it's in, but I know it will be in the GA channel with the 17.1 release, which is coming up pretty soon. I believe.
Yeah, it's coming super soon. And if you want to learn more about that, you should definitely check out an upcoming Toolbox live show where we're going to talk a little bit more about the 17.1 features that you could be using once 17.1 comes out in a short amount of time that I can't specify probably. But you'll know.
I know. I believe I know when it's scheduled, but there are some people who'd be very upset if I start sharing information so let's move on to the next topic.
Right.
So The next thing I want to show off, this one falls a little bit more into the security area, but this is actually a really important one that we found. Now, what I'm demonstrating here, I've got a password in a string constant. Please don't use this as, this is a guideline of how you should do things. This is not how you should do that. But what I want to show you here is, I'm very new to designing any kind of user ID password validation or anything like that. And I found this code on the net. Great. Okay, so the validation URL, realaccountvalidation.com. I'm sure that's legitimate. I trust that one.
Yeah, seems like it.
I'm going to copy those 2 lines and realaccountvalidation.com, right? All right, so let me drop that into Visual Studio. And what in the world just happened here? So no, that doesn't say accountvalidation.com. No, it doesn't, because this version of Visual Studio, as well as Visual Studio 2019, has got a fix for this particular exploit. Let me show you what's actually going on here. So I'm going to hit Control Q and I'm going to look for bidirectional or bidi. I'm in the text editor general is bidirectional text control characters. That I'm going to turn that on and say OK. So what's actually happening here, if you look on the screen now, between real and account, you see these little U plus 202E and 202C icons. Those are Unicode characters that tell the rendering engine that everything between those should be rendered right to left instead of left to right. So even though when I look at it in Word, which, Word is not a coding environment, it actually is rendering those characters right to left. You don't believe me? I'm only pressing the right arrow key here and watch what happens. I'm not kidding. All I'm hitting is the right arrow key. And what's actually happening there is as soon as it gets past the L in real, it encounters that Unicode character. It says everything from here on is rendered right to left. And so the next character is the T and then backwards. So even though the code I was looking at on the web looked perfectly fine, when I bring it over to Visual Studio, what is actually there is very different.
I didn't know you could do that. Like, even in Word, I didn't even know you could.
Yeah, until I found out about this myself, I didn't know about it either. But once we did, it's like, okay, we can't let this stand, because when this goes to the compiler will strip out those Unicode characters. So what the compiler will see will be what you see on the screen right now, which is these characters. And that's why what we've done in Visual Studio is make sure that what we're rendering is actually the code that's going to be sent to the compiler. The reason why we've added the Unicode control characters with these placeholders is so that you understand why what you pasted is not actually what you thought you were pasting. And we wanted to add those control characters to give you a little bit more understanding that, hey, wherever you got this code might not be the safest, because I thought I was sending my user ID and password to realaccountvalidation.com, but I sent it to some other account that, who knows who owns that account, what they're going to do, and they just got my user credentials. So this is a new option that we added. By default, it's on for users. If you have a reason to turn it off, again, you can go into Control Q, look for bidirectional. That will take you to Text Editor General, and there is a checkbox to turn that on or off. If you have a reason to turn this off, I would really love to know why. You can reach out to me on Twitter or any avenue like that, but we believe right now that this is something that users are actually going to find safer. And so we've turned it on for all of our users by default. If you have a use case where this is actually getting in your way, please let us know, because our goal here is it's to keep everybody secure, but we don't want to get in your way. So we've been doing some work here in the editor to help make sure that the editor experience is better and safer. A lot of this plays into the trust settings that Ruben and his team have been working on, that I know have been talked about recently as well. So this is one I kind of just wanted to show some of the changes. And if you're seeing these U plus characters, I want folks to know what they're for and just to understand what they mean.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I mean, I had no idea you could even do that in the first place. So I think the fact that there are precautions put in place regardless is
That's our thought as well. We just
Yeah,
want to be safer. And we're working with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code has also got the same experience. We all got it in at kind of the same time once we understood that particular exploit. And we're working with them, and we're working with the community, and actually even working with the folks who own the Unicode specification we want this to be a safer environment. We don't want exploits like this. Apparently, this has been an exploit for a little while. It got some attention recently, and we realized how important it was, and we put a fix in for it.
Awesome. So before we pivot to the next cool feature, we've been talking a bit about feedback and user feedback and how we will totally take all of it to heart. So we have one piece of feedback on autosave from the chat to just implement it like VS Code does their autosave. So every second.
That's a great piece of feedback, and actually one that we were looking at. The reason why that's not in there in our first pass is actually kind of simple. Until recently, Visual Studio had synchronous saving, which meant when you save your file, it's hitting the UI thread. And if you even imagine a world where every second or so Visual Studio is interrupting the UI thread to save to disk and then coming back, you would you're not doing that. So
careful what you wish for.
Exactly. Now, fortunately, one of the features that I believe 17.1 has it on is asynchronous file save and file open. So when we've got the confidence in that one that it's doing everything that we expect it to do, we're considering adding code cleanup, or not code cleanup, autosave on idle, autosave on every so many seconds, autosave on document switch. We've got a handful of different ways that we're thinking about expanding on it right now. So yeah, the autosave on a time interval, it's definitely on our radar. And if that's something that you're interested in, Leslie, I apologize for not having all the links for these right now, but we do have developer community tickets for all of these items on right now. Take a look for those and give them upvotes and give us your cases for it, because the more people we know, if you upvote one of those items, if we've got questions about it, you'll get notified about it. And when we hopefully eventually take that item to, we're doing it or we've released it, you'll get notified for it. So please give us that feedback.
Yeah, I've really honestly gotten into the habit of using dev community a lot more just in terms of like brainstorming what it is that people might want to. Like I'm in the initial phases of creating a new project for extensibility purposes. And I was browsing DevCom to see like, what are the people saying? Because I'm not actually sure what we should add to this ongoing project exactly, or I don't know where to start. So it's nice to get that community input first and then kind of go from there in the customer research department. So
exactly. And for me, sometimes if, like, for instance, there's a feature that I'm working on right now that might help out if you were concerned about words that are misspelled. I don't want to share too much too quickly on that one, but I will say that I went up to developer community and I was looking at the feedback, and I even asked some questions about where are you most concerned about misspelled words, tokens, comments, method names, namespaces. What are the things that you would want validation on, and what are the areas that you don't? And it's been a opportunity for me that the people who have gone to developer community and said, I want this, I've got an opportunity to engage directly with them to make sure that what we give them is what they actually want. So yeah, developer community has been a great resource for that. The autosave every second reminds me of another thing. Code cleanup on save and autosave do not work together by design. So we thought it would be a little bit disruptive if every time autosave kicked in, it went ahead and removed all your unused usings or unused variables or things like that. Because, every now and then I like to take a breath and, grab a glass of water or something. And if every time I did that, it just removed all my unused variables, no, we just found that to be a really bad idea. So the code cleanup on save is only going to trigger on an explicit save. So if you're hitting Control S, you're hitting, I think it's Control Shift S, which is save all files. If you do a build and you have not disabled the option to save files when you build, those commands will actually run code cleanup. We will not run code cleanup on an autosave. It just seemed like a bad idea, and it's going to be a challenge to convince me otherwise of that one. But if the community tells me that that's what they want, we'll see if we can add it as an option.
Yeah, sounds good.
So One that I really wanted to demo today, but again, I've got an internal build here. In fact, I had to turn a handful of things off that we're not ready to show, but is code indexing for finding files. So I got to kind of talk about this one a little bit, but if I hit Control-Shift-F and I bring up finding files, which helpfully decided to go partially off the screen, and let's say I'm going to look for spaces. If I do a find all, you're going to find it gets those matches here. It found almost 40,000 matches, and it was almost instantaneous. I don't have a great example of how it's slow, because what's happening behind the scenes is when you first load the project, it's creating an index of all the code documents. And that takes it on. With this project, it doesn't take particularly long. With a larger project, it can take, a minute or two, depending on your machine and things like that. But once you've paid that cost once, your find and files time, we're seeing substantial drops. Searches that used to take 5 to 10 seconds are now practically instantaneous. So I'd love to show more about it here. And I know Dennison, one of my colleagues, is going to be talking a little bit more about this in the future, but
yeah, he is.
I'm sure he is. He's excited. He's the main PM on it, so I don't want to steal too much of his thunder here, but the finding files with the indexing, you're going to see a small performance. You're going to see that indexing happening in the very beginning when you first open up a file. But once it comes through, your find experience is so much faster than it used to be. And finding files is one of the most common experiences that we've got. It's really great that we were able to get that indexing in there and just make it that much faster.
Totally agree. And yeah, if you want to learn more about it when hopefully the demo gods are more in our favor, I believe Dennison will be talking about it on the upcoming 17.1 episode. So stay tuned for that.
I believe that's the plan. So, all right, next thing to show you. So I'm going to go down here. And again, this is not best practices or anything like that, but I
should make my password really valid password.
Well, I tried that, but Microsoft IT would prefer us to have our passwords be slightly stronger.
I guess so.
So here I want to do, this is my customer, and I want to put the names of each one of my customers in here. No, this is not the best way to do it, but kind of follow along with me. And here are my folks: Christian, Aditya, Etienne, Oleg, Caleb, Hannah, Jessica, Kale, and Amadeus, who just happen to be developers in the
teammates, yeah. Yep. I recognize these people.
Absolutely. So I need to put their names here where this is my customer. And if I double click here, well, the greater than, less than arrows aren't part of that. So I'm going to have to remove all of those. You can probably imagine why this might be a little bit of a challenge. Let me show you what we recently did. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to move these lines. So I have 9 lines and I copy them into my copy buffer. I'm going to put my cursor in on one of these names, and I'm going to hit Shift-Alt semicolon. And that is the multi-caret command for give me a caret at everything that matches the token that I'm currently on. So now I've got the carets at each one of these locations, and I can backspace, get rid of those, and delete. Now I have something in my copy buffer with exactly 9 lines. I have 9 carets, and when I paste, it will take one line from what's in the copy buffer and put it on each individual caret. So if I can get those carets right how I wanted it, I just took those 9 lines and dumped them right into my code without having to do anything fancy with copy paste or anything like that.
That is pretty sweet. Just the whole multi-cursor thing in general is already awesome. It's a feature that I forget about all the time, and I really wish I didn't, because it's nifty sometimes.
You know what? I've been in the industry now for much longer than I care to admit, but when I was first a developer, I used Emacs quite a bit. And Emacs had a lot of these keyboard macros that you could specify what you wanted to do at each location, and then you would run them. This is kind of a little bit more modern version of it, where I can put my carets at all the locations I want to do something and then do it in all of those all at once. I forget about multi-caret as well, but it's got a lot of power to it. One of the other things we did with this version is we reached out, a shout out to the Program L folks, which is a mailing list of visually impaired and blind developers. And those folks helped us with what kind of communication would you want your screen reader to tell you when you're working with multiple carets? What could the screen reader possibly tell you? And the whole experience here is now we took their feedback, and if you're using a screen reader with multi-caret, we're hoping that the experience of what the screen reader feedback is going to be a lot more useful for you. So again, we'd love to hear more feedback about that one. If you're having a hard time figuring out how to tell me on developer community, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm always happy to get those connections, and particularly with screen readers, which is an area that, you know, I'm sighted. I don't use a screen reader. I really want to get the feedback from the people who really know how to use screen readers well to make sure that what we're doing is right for them. A phrase I keep hearing is nothing for us without us. And that's why we really want to hear from the folks who have accessibility needs, who have disabilities, to make sure that the work that we're doing is the right work and actually helps people be more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And for those of you who don't know, in addition to Dante just being the editor expert, he's also the accessibility expert as well. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns about how to be more accessible and when writing your code in VS, and also just how to take advantage of the accessibility features that are or aren't in Visual Studio, you should definitely let him know.
Thanks, Leslie. I appreciate that.
Sweet. So what you got next?
So, well, that actually is the end of the list of the things that I can show right now. We've got some other things that are in the pipe work. And again, I encourage folks to take a look at developer community and help us, you know, share some of those things that you feel would be best for you. But those are the ones that I've got right now. I'm looking forward to some new things that we're going to be working on for 17.2, and particularly some accessibility items. I keep putting that hat on because it's one I'm also very passionate about, but we've got some stuff coming in the pipe, and we really want to keep engaging with the community and finding out where we are. But that's what I've got for right now.
Awesome. So I guess we can chat and respond to some of the chat that y'all have been doing. So one question we got was about keyboard shortcuts, which is a question that's been on my mind for a bit too, obviously. But any chance of a redesigned keyboard shortcut editor? Seems something more like VS Code, where you can easily find and remove conflicts. A floating window would be nice.
Well, this is one I would love to do myself. There are a lot of opportunities for a better experience around customization, which actually is more the shell than the editor. But, you know, it's definitely a place that we're hearing the feedback. Now, you did mention conflicts there. One of the things that you can do, so I'm going to Tools Options, and I'm hitting Control E. Well, I hit with the mouse, but you can also use Control E and search for keyboard, and that will take you to environment keyboard. And this will give you the keyboard editor. And considering that you mentioned redesigned, I imagine you probably already know about this. And come on, Visual Studio, the demo gods are being mischievous.
Visual Studio is like, oh, good, his formal demo's over.
Yeah, no, okay, so, all right, let me close this and let me hit Control Q and look for keyboard. Change hotkeys and keyboard shortcuts. And yes, Control Q saved me on this one, which is, I usually use Control Q. I don't know why I went to Tools Options manually. But if I'm looking for a keyboard, so let's say those multi-caret commands. So, you know, insert caret at all matching, there's that Shift Alt semicolon. If I wanted to bind that to something else, say Shift semicolon, oh, looks like that shortcut is not actually used by anyone. I wouldn't have a conflict with that. But let's say, you know, Control C, sure. Now it will tell me down here who actually is using that particular keyboard shortcut to help me find, before you bind this key, this is places where there might be a conflict. It's not the best experience. I believe there are improvements that we could do here, but, you know, this actually will help you in cases where you have conflicts, that this can help you kind of get around that a little bit. I'm not going to rebind that key, thank you. But yeah, this is the experience that we've got right now. So if you're here in the Tools Options under Keyboard, you can look for any command that you're looking for, like anything having to do with Word. All right, well, complete word. Here's some old Emacs commands, next subword. All of these are in here. And if you want to, like, maybe I don't want Control Alt Right to be next subword, I just want to be Control Right. Well, I can say Control Right, and that's move Control Right. You know what? I'm okay with changing that one. So when I hit OK, now that particular, nope, I screwed that up. Of course I did. I need to, let me go back into hit Control Q, go back into my hotkeys and keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to look for subword. I'm going to go to next subword. I'm going to hit Control Right and then click Assign to actually bind that keyboard shortcut. Now that Control Right is going to go for next subword instead of next word. And I got the ability to customize my experience. Not everybody likes going through this workflow, but we have a lot of power users who come to us and say, yeah, I really want to modify how this behaves. Help me do it. This is the interface that you're going to use. If you've got ideas on how to make this better, developer community, please let us know how we could make this better, and we'd love to hear about it.
I know one thought that I have based off of my own recon that I've been doing a little bit with this area has been the ability to, I guess, deprecate some of the keyboard shortcuts that are being used by lesser used features. Because I know there's like some features that have existed in VS for years, but they may not be as heavily used as something else that has a more complex keyboard shortcut by comparison.
Not that I'm picking on anything, but Control P, a single letter shortcut is hooked to print.
Who's printing?
Some people do. I actually I had some feedback recently about printing and that they were having problems printing files. But the reality is, if you don't print, this is a great keyboard shortcut to move to something else that you want to use more frequently.
Yeah, or rather, I guess what I meant by that is like, how frequently are people printing? Truly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this isn't Word, so. Yeah. Honestly, I forget that you can print in VS Code or in VS now that I think about it. That's pretty funny. Cool. Another question or comment that came in chat is that Multi-caret is also a multi-file, or is also available across files. Is that true?
I don't know.
That'd be sweet if it was.
I have to look into that. I honestly don't know. I know if I have multiple windows, okay. All right. Yeah. Let's do the brilliant thing, which is, try to do something on the fly in the middle.
Live.
Folks. I'm going to go ahead and split so that I'm seeing two of these, and I'm going to look for basket. Well, here, let me put in a comment so it's easier to find. Basket, and then Shift Alt semicolon. So it looks like it only did that in this document. And is it Alt click? I actually don't remember. Okay, so no, is it Control click? No, I know it's not Control click. I don't remember the mouse shortcut. I only remember the I only remember the keyboard shortcut. So if I'm here and I make a change, it doesn't appear to be doing it in both places. So, I don't know. I will look into that one, and I will add something to my Twitter feed when I find out how multi-caret works across files. There may be a way to do it. I just don't happen to know it off the top of my head. Interesting.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. Like, I personally can't think of a scenario where I would need it to go across files and in this kind of context, but I bet there is a use case for it.
Yeah, one of the things I don't want to say hazards that I find is when I hit Shift Alt semicolon here, every instance of basket has got a caret on it. But if I go later on in my file, and of course I picked something that I don't have an example for in this file, but that will actually add, there's one, that basket item off the top. If I were to change it, I might not realize that I was modifying things that are outside my view. And yeah, GitHub is being very upset for making that change because references are out of sync and everything. But
what have you done?
Yep. So those carets can be outside of your view. I could imagine if they're actually going throughout all of your documents, that could be even more abrupt. But then again, if I wanted to change a particular token, it might be kind of useful for it to find all instances across. I got to look into that. I'll see what I can find out about that one, because now I'm kind of curious.
Sweet. Another comment that came up a bit earlier was somebody mentioned their favorite feature was color tabs, which I see that you're using. Do you want to tell the audience more about that? And
so the colored tabs up here, I can right click any of the tabs, and I have set tab color, and I can change those around. There's tab layout. I like my tabs on the top, but I know some folks particularly like them over on the left. And you could associate the tabs with, like, all of these are in the application core project. If I open up a tab from a different project, it's going to show that one in a different color. So you can see this has got a purple highlight at the top instead of the green highlight. Now, by default, Visual Studio does all of this for me. So I don't actually even think in my mind about making sure that I've set the tabs up correctly. Visual Studio just makes sure, but I can see very quickly that, the tabs over on this right side, the purple highlight indicates that they're in a different project from the green ones. Now, fortunately, screen reader users, when they're going from one document to another, the screen reader will tell you what project it's in, but this just gives you a little bit of a way to have a little more of a visual indicator to know which ones are in which projects. And then if I right click these, I can modify what the tab color is going to be to make it so that if I'm having a hard time maybe telling what these colors are from each other, I can specify those colors so that folks who maybe are have color blindness, you can set those colors to be something that's a little bit friendlier to you. The initial set of colors that we chose had some color blindness put into some color blind affordances put into it, so that if you're only using a couple colors, it will at least try to not pick colors that are going to be difficult for somebody who's colorblind to be able to disambiguate. Obviously, the more colors we put in there, the harder it's going to be to maintain that one, but that's why we want to add the customizability to it.
awesome. Plus, it's just honestly just nice to have a pop of color that differentiates the tabs from the rest of, I guess, the background or the color scheme that's going on in VS, regardless of what theme you're using a lot of the time. So
I agree completely. And one of the things that we're learning, so here's something that I actually found out maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Folks with visual impairments like higher amounts of contrast. So a white versus a darker background is easier for somebody with low vision to be able to read. There is another disability that, of course, my mind is not bringing to mind right now, that too much color contrast can actually make the letters look like they jitter a little bit or they're moving around. So if the color contrast is too high, it causes a different problem for folks with a different disability. And what this all comes back to is customizability. We want to give you the ability to customize your experience so that you can get the color themes, you can get the choices, the size of the characters, and all of that to be what is going to be more convenient for your particular needs. I know that Grace and the Shell team have been doing some amazing things with the different themes, visual themes, to allow you to share some of the things with Visual Studio Code. Just, there are more things in there to help you get the environment that you want. And there's more we can do, and there's more that we're looking into doing. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but yeah, developer community, keep talking with us. Keep helping us find those places where we can make things better. And it's a great opportunity for us to deliver on that.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So also continuing the dialogue with favorite features, we have another viewer's favorite feature being able to select text by holding the control key and then clicking and dragging. Can you actually do that?
Well, I'm going to hold down control and I'm clicking and dragging, and it's selecting everything by entire words, which is, if I just, without the control key, if I click and drag, it's just going to go exactly to where my cursor is. If I'm holding down, well, okay, you have to start the drag with it.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
But that is nice, because most of the time, yeah, you do want the full.
You want entire tokens at a time, and you'll be able to do it. That is not compatible with the subword selection. So if I wanted to just grab item ID, if I hit control click, it's always going to grab the entire word. But yeah, that control drag, absolutely. And little things like that. If you click, it puts a cursor. If you double click, it selects a token. If you triple click, it selects the entire line. I can't remember. No, I know in Word, quad click will do an entire paragraph. We never discovered a lot of people like to hammer away on the click button that much to try to grab an entire block. But, the extend selection command, extend selection, which I never remember the keyboard shortcut for it. I hit Control C and I'm looking for it. Oh, expand selection. That's why I'm not remembering. Shift Alt equal from anywhere. Shift Alt equal. Well, it went from a single character to the entire token. I hit it again. It grabbed the entire line. I do it again. It added the semicolon. The next time it grabs the block. The next time it grabs the method. Shift Alt equal. Each instance of that will expand to the next logical item. I believe if I hit it again, well, why not? I'll hit it again. Now I believe it's got the entire class. I hit it again. So every time that you hit that, it's just going to expand the selection one more step. I always get extend and expand mixed up, but I think that's
too. Thanks, English language.
Yep, no kidding. Control Shift and arrow is another way to do the same thing. I mean, if I'm in a token, Control Shift right, well, I'm grabbing entire words at a time. The difference with Control Shift is it's going to start where this caret was at the beginning of the search, where the Control click, Control drag will grab the entire token that I start with. A small thing, but it's, if one behavior is something that annoys you, be aware there are other behaviors. Maybe that's one that works better for your particular experience.
Sweet. This is just telling me I really need to brush up on my keyboard shortcuts.
Ironically, so do I. That's why I love Visual Studio Search, the Control Q, because anything I'm looking for, if I start typing the command I'm looking for, it shows right there, Control Alt right arrow, Control Alt left arrow. Those are next in previous subword. It adds all of that into Visual Studio Search if I forget a keyboard shortcut.
Yeah, that is really sweet. Also, on the subject of keyboard shortcuts, another comment from earlier was Control K, Control E for formatting.
Yep. I mean, Control K, Control E is format. I believe that's format document. Let me go up here to Visual Studio Search.
Yeah, I need like a cheat sheet for these keyboards.
Honestly, sometimes I do too. Okay, it's not format document is Control K, Control D. I don't remember Control K, Control E off the top of my head. What is it? So let me go into my change the keyboards, change the keyboard command, and hit Control K, Control E. That is run default code cleanup. So yeah, that is, you're going to use my feature and remind me of the keyboard shortcut. Oh, I'm embarrassed now. Oh, I'm so sorry. But yeah, Control K, Control E, that will run whichever code, it'll run the fixers specifically in Profile 1. If you don't want to run it manually all the time, you can hook it up to save or just leave it there and run it whenever you like. That works just fine.
That is awesome.
Yep. And I see someone asked there, can you save the customizations? All of the changes I'm making into tools options are saved in your Visual Studio configuration options. So any keyboard shortcuts that you change will be saved with that version of Visual Studio. So VS 2022 will carry your keyboard shortcuts forward. I don't know very well how well it saves them from 2019 to 2022. That's a question for the shell team that I couldn't answer right now.
Yeah, it would be awesome if all of that did migrate with you from version to version or even machine to machine.
It certainly would. Again, some of them I think do machine to machine, but if you're finding something that isn't doing it, let us know. That's how we're going to know about it. That's how we're going to find out about it. And we're going to be able to hear those votes and make a change on it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So what about you? Do you have a favorite feature that we didn't talk about yet?
Honestly, Visual Studio just helps me do what I need to do. And I can't pick on any one particular thing. I will say from a purely selfish standpoint, I love IntelliCode. I really don't like to say anything bad about Visual Studio or anything like that. Okay, yes, I do. I say it.
Let it out.
But if I go console dot and I got to look through all of the entries that are there, okay, console's not that bad. Thank you, Visuals. Okay, IntelliSense annoys me sometimes too, but I sometimes going through a long list of this length, it can be kind of hard to find the one I want. IntelliCode at the very top says, you know, when we've looked at open source repos, when people are doing console dot, these are probably the ones they're using most frequently. And I can train Visual Studio on my code. So not just looking at open source repos, but in my code, what do I usually do after a console dot? And it will tell me, yeah, these are usually the methods that you tend to use for this particular class. IntelliCode saves me so much time, and there's more that they're doing with it every day. I love it, and it's not one of the ones I worked on, so I'm a little jealous of the folks who got to work on that one. But yeah, things like little things like that where we're really using machine learning. Not to mention, again, I was actually speaking to a developer recently who's dyslexic, and she was commenting that things like IntelliCode and anything that helps me find what it is, so that I don't have to remember the specific order of the characters. I can just find the one I want, hit enter, and it puts it in. That really helps folks keep track of what they're doing. And here, IntelliCode has even said, you know, buffer height equals, you know, usually it's probably a variable that you wanted, and the only integer that's from here up is quantity. Is this the one you want? Press tab, and there. It went ahead and did the line for me. IntelliCode is doing some absolutely amazing things, and I'm eager to work with them wherever we can, and you know, just bring together all the things: extensibility, shell customization, debugging. That's why I work with an IDE. That's why I love having something with all that power. There's a cost that comes with it. Visual Studio is big. I'm not going to deny that, but just having all of that together, it helps me get what I need to get done.
Yep. Yeah. It's like working on extensibility so much. There's a lot of questions about why don't you make more compatibility with VS Code for features like that and stuff. And it's like, we'd love to, but like VS in contrast with VS Code, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes and on stage, essentially. Like there's a lot more opportunities to do more features depending on your circumstance. And as a result, it makes it a bit more complicated to simply just migrate one piece into VS Code or vice versa, because it's not gonna be a one-to-one sync.
Yep. Now, on the flip side of that one, since I'm on the editor team, there are a lot of places where we do overlap with VS Code, and we're speaking with them very frequently that VS Code is able to do experiments a little bit more frequently because of their rapid release schedule. So we've kind of been partnering with them on, hey, here's some things that they identified that they wanted to do. They ran an experiment, and their community is taking it well. We're sitting back and saying, hey, this is something that folks like, people are using. Are there opportunities to bring it over? And in fact, that whole thing I was showing off with the Unicode characters, we partnered with VS Code to make sure that we would both get that fix in and have a consistent experience across the two editors. Because if you're using both products, it makes sense where you can to make sure you understand the visual language that represents the Microsoft developer tools, as opposed to each product individually. Now, that's something we're still learning. That's something we're still getting better at, but it's an opportunity that we've got to grow.
Yep. I mean, we've even got full-blown support of just keeping status quo. Like, please don't make multi-caret as it's implemented in VS Code. I much prefer the VS method.
Appreciate that one. You know what? We showed them what the changes we made, as well as the new screen reader settings that we had, and they're investigating. Maybe there will be options for VS mode, VS Code style. We'll see how it all progresses. So, you know, again, give that feedback what you like, what you don't like, and so on. So we know. Last thing we want is to discover the reason why we haven't gotten feedback on multi-caret is everybody loves it the way it is. The only feedback we hear is to change it. We don't want that. So I'm not suggesting you fill developer community up with everything you do like, but you know, find those opportunities, talk about them, help us. And again, if you get those opportunities when Visual Studio says, hey, please share with us how you're feeling, we'd love to hear the places that we're working well and we're working.
Yeah, honestly, like as somebody who has to sift through a bunch of feedback tickets a lot too, it is kind of nice to get the very rare just compliment. Is not necessarily a question. I'll end up closing it because it's not a question or a piece of feedback, but like it does make me feel good. It makes the team feel good to know that, okay, that we're on the right track with this particular piece, or at least to this person we are. So doing something right.
I'll share this. We recently got some feedback from a blind developer who had lost his job with COVID. And after, I think he said 19 months, he was able to get a new job working with SQL Server tools in Visual Studio. And he was able to get the job because of the accessibility work that we've done. I was just so thrilled to see that kind of positive feedback and that kind of we're helping people in that it really started my entire week off great. So those are that we love to hear that as well. We'd love to know where we can do better. And the more feedback we can get, the better we can prioritize what we're going to do. I can't promise we'll do everything that we hear about, but at least if we're hearing that this is a major pain point, we can prioritize it and approach it best.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. See what else we got going on. Got another comment from chat. Tried open tickets on this, but I haven't been able to explain why I vastly prefer VS block selection over VS code. I'm assuming that's like text selection, or is that a different
block selection? And you know what? Again, this is one I don't remember the keyboard shortcut off the top of my head, but block selection, expand. No, it's not here. There is a way.
Like a code block. Is that might be what they're referring
to? Oh, there it is. So I'm holding Alt right now, and it actually is a multi-caret type of selection that as I dragged out a rectangle, it actually dragged a rectangular selection. And so now it's box selection. That's why I didn't remember it. This allows me to create, so when I was doing that down here at the bottom, when I had those names in there, I could have hit Alt, drag this down, and change it that way. So box selection, Alt drag does it. There is a keyboard shortcut. Is it Alt? It's not Alt down, is it? No, that's moving the line around. Shift Alt. Shift Alt is the keyboard way to do it. So as I'm hitting Shift Alt, I'm dragging out a perfectly rectangular space with multiple carets, and now I can make my changes on each one of those lines. So now if you're talking about block selection, that would be the Shift Alt. Is that the Shift Alt equal that expands the selection? And that's the one we talked about a little bit earlier, but it works on lines that are empty. Block selection is a godsend when writing SQL.
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's really cool. I do remember you demoed that, I think the last time you were on the show, and I thought it was so cool. So
I think so too. Now, box selection, we actually made a change to that one so that in the old behavior, once you created a box selection like I've got here, if you moved the cursor keys, it would break the box selection. Now, if you use the cursor keys, it will change it to a multi-caret solution. And there's an option to switch how that behaves if that's not the way you want it to work. But we found that the box selection is a lot more useful for folks with the convert over to a multi-caret experience than what we had before.
Awesome. Well, that is actually all the time we have. So I think this was a really fun exploration of here's some cool features that you may not know about. I'm going to make myself a keyboard shortcut cheat sheet for these awesome editor features because I'm really missing out, clearly.
Well, I hope you do. And maybe that's something we should be sharing. Well, there is one. If I go up here and look for keyboard, there is a keyboard shortcut reference, which is going to bring up the web page that I'm not going to put up right now because it opened it in my personal web page. But that command up there will give you, there is a printable.
Oh,
this is the one from Visual Studio 2019 that obviously we can't put everything in there, but this has got a handful of keyboard shortcuts that we've got today that was updated.
Well, actually, yeah, I remember because back when we were still in the office, I had a mouse pad of this basically, and it was my mouse pad. And it was awesome because it was the cheat sheet that I wanted, and it was always by my side because it's a mouse pad. So
yep.
I need to go steal that from the office. Sweet. Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming, Dante. And yeah, if any of you have any more questions about the editor and how you can take full advantage of it or anything about accessibility, you can reach out to Dante. His Twitter is right there. And yeah, with that, I don't know if you had anything else, any last words?
That's all I've got this time. I look forward to coming around next time with sharing around the next set of them. But I'm glad to get the opportunity. It's been fun hanging out and chatting with you, and I look forward to talking more of our community.
Yeah, it's always great to have you on the show. And if you want to learn more about some cool editor features like the search stuff that we were talking about earlier, I forgot the formal name for it. The one that where the demo wasn't working.
The index find in files. Yes.
There we go. Yep, find in files indexing. We might be talking about it at the upcoming 17.1 episode, as well as a host of brand new features that are going to be available in 17.1. So stay tuned for that as well. So until next time, happy coding.
Take care.